how the Lakers could move from intriguing to inevitable by aiming at the single tallest swing in the sport. Welcome to Lakers News Fan Report. Drop your like and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Because this isn't a fantasy shot in the dark. It's a map built on rules, timing, leverage, and basketball logic. The kind that turns a headline into a strategy. I'm speaking to you one-on-one like we're sharing a booth after hours. And here's the brief I'm putting in your hand before we dive. First, I'll explain why the league's current trends have pushed Los Angeles toward a bolder, longer frontline vision. Then I'll sketch the only two lawful pathways under the new CBA that get you from no chance to phone calls that matter. After that, I'll break down the on-court fit in real sets, how spacing, screening angles, and late clock reads would look next to a lead creator like Luka Doncic and a living legend managing his minutes with elite IQ. Then I'll price the move in assets and in identity because there's no headline without a cost. Finally, I'll tell you where my intel says the temperature is right now, and I'll deliver my verdict with no hedging. And I want your lineup ideas and trade frameworks in the comments before we close, because this community thinks the game at a level that deserves a seat in the conversation. The trend line is simple to see if you watch the West with clear eyes. The teams that own the glass, contest the arc without panic, and manufacture paint touches without over-dribbling keep winning the biggest games. Size with mobility, length with technique, that's the currency. The Nuggets protect the rim with timing and punish you with vertical spacing. The Wolves warp the lane with length across the front line. The Thunder crowd ball handlers with arms for days and then explode in transition. If the Lakers want to graduate from dangerous to defining, the most efficient path is to add a 7-foot phenomenon who erases errors on defense and stretches geometry on offense without needing 20 dribbles to get to his spot. And yes, this is where the room gets quiet, because there's only one player on earth who checks every box like that right now. Before we talk fit, we have to respect the rule book, because the new CBA turned ambition into a minefield. There are only two doors here. Door A is the trade route, with matching salary and draft capital engineered through a carefully legal structure that doesn't violate second apron restrictions on aggregation. In plain English, the Lakers can't just pack 3 mid-sized deals together above certain thresholds and call it a day. There has to be a clean matching spine, potentially a third team to absorb or reroute money, and protections on picks that don't leave you with an empty cupboard when you most need flexibility. Door B, the cap space dream, is fantasy under current rules for a team built to contend now, so cross it off. Translation: if this ever happens, it's because Los Angeles constructs a historic, tidy, high-clarity trade that San Antonio looks at and says, "We don't love losing a generational piece, but we can build a decade around what's coming back." That means the framework has to be heavy in real value, not just headlines, prime picks on a timed ladder with swaps that have teeth, a blue-chip young player who fits their timeline, and a high-minute starter who helps them immediately so they don't feel like they're stepping back off a cliff. The only way you enter a room like this with a straight face is by knowing exactly what you're sending and exactly what you're protecting. Now the basketball, the part we live for. Imagine a base offense where Doncic runs delay into split action at the top and Wembanyama lifts from the dunker to the slot as the second screener. You trap the ball and Wemby pops to 18 feet. Clean catch, high release, no contest. You switch and Luka rejects to the empty corner while Wemby slips into a pocket pass at the dot. One gather, finish. Flip it. Run Spain, pick and roll with Wemby as the tall spacer. The back screen pins help for a heartbeat. Luka snakes. And if the tag comes, the kick hits the weak side 45 with a corner shooter ready on the hop. Want to protect legs and still generate star shots? Call get actions, where Luka hands off to a guard, Wemby sets the rescreen, and the defense has to choose between surrendering a lane or an uncontested pop. Add LeBron's brain as a second-side playmaker in a controlled 30 to 32-minute role, and you've built an attack that doesn't require anyone to wrestle the clock every trip. The gravity is spread across the floor. The corner defenders can't stunt off catch-and-shoot threats. The big can't sit in a long drop because Wemby's comfort at mid-range punishes late contests. And when teams switch everything, You post the mismatch with angle seals that don't ask for bruising, just timing. Defense is where this gets unfair in a playoff series. The Lakers toggle between at-level coverage and soft switch principles, knowing that with Wemby behind the play, the low man can stay home one extra step. Peel switching becomes a weapon, not a band-aid. Guards jump out of bad matchups because the rim is protected by an armory of length. Closeouts stay short, because the lane presence is so commanding that drivers settle or pass one beat earlier. The third quarter slippage you and I have complained about in past seasons, those 2-minute pockets of second-chance points and back-cut layups, gets deprogrammed by simple physics. Even when he isn't blocking shots, he's erasing ideas. The ripple benefits touch everyone. A center like DeAndre Ayton, if retained in a 3-big ecosystem, can feast on second units as a low-usage finisher and glass cleaner, never forced to shoulder late-clock creation. Austin Reeves gets a friendlier diet of catch-and-shoot threes and straight-line drives because help isn't camped at the nail. Wings like Vanderbilt and Vincent see their defensive pressure convert directly into runouts because one long deflection at the top plus one long arm at the rim equals transition chances without gambling. And the coaching staff gets to lower the dribble tax on Luka without lowering his impact because the offense arrives at good shots through movement and screening, not just usage. All of that sounds like a daydream unless the clocks match, so let's talk windows. Under contract realities, there are only 2 periods when this kind of conversation can move from noise to notes. Around the draft, when teams admit truths about their arcs and third teams are eager to balance sheets, and in the early season trade zone after restrictions expire for recently acquired players. Neither is a guarantee, both demand discipline. The Lakers would have to spend the next months modeling every version of pick timing. What years you can legally move, what protections keep flexibility, and how swaps preserve upside without reckless exposure. They would also need to decide which player archetype is non-negotiable to keep in purple and gold. Because if you send out too much playmaking or too much two-way edge, you win the press conference and lose the second round. I'm telling you plainly, the only way this gets real is if the outgoing is painful but precise. One centerpiece, one blue-chip youth, multiple firsts, multiple swaps, and the incoming is more than a trophy name. It's the exact skill set that lifts you where the season is actually decided. There's also the human layer, the part fans feel even through a screen. Wembanyama's personality reads as team-first, process-driven, detail-hungry. You drop that into a locker room with a global legend who has nothing left to prove and a modern point, God who manipulates pace like a conductor. And ego friction isn't the fear. Roles are. The staff would need to codify responsibilities early, late-game A-option decisions, rim protection rules that keep everyone aggressive without confusion, and a shot map that doesn't ask anyone to live in low-efficiency zones. In my notebook, the closing group on a typical night lands as Luka, Reeves, LeBron, Wembanyama, plus one defender shooter based on matchup. The playbook shrinks in the final 2 minutes into elite concepts. Empty corner, PNR with a slip counter, cross-screen into a duck-in, horns twist into Spain, and a sideline outset that uses Wemby as a catch-high, hand-back hub to neutralize switches. That's not theory. That's how you bank wins without wearing legs thin in March. Pricing the move is the hard part, and I won't insult you with fairy tale discounts. The Spurs would ask for the world, and they'd be right to. A credible structure from Los Angeles starts with multiple unprotected firsts, strategically timed swaps, and a premium young piece that can headline a rebuild in a real city. It likely requires a third team to either supply the Spurs with a win-now complement or to take on money that can't be stacked under second apron rules. It probably costs one of the names that make fans bite their lip. And the identity cost is just as real. You move from a balanced, durable rotation to a higher-ceiling organism that depends on the health and harmony of 3 stars. That's a risk you only take when your timeline demands it and your culture can absorb it. The Lakers are one of the few organizations that check both boxes. Built to compete today, built to hold pressure tomorrow. I promised suspense with substance. So here is the moment where I tell you what I know and what I'm willing to project. There is no signature, There is no handshake. There is no paperwork. What there is right now is a league-wide recognition that the combination of a heliocentric creator, a generational thinker-finisher at forward, and the most transformative long defender in the game would reset the West on contact. There is also a realistic understanding that for San Antonio to even pick up a call, the offer has to be outrageous but organized. And there is, inside El Segundo, a growing appetite to build the kind of two-timeline monster that lets a legend manage his body while the future devours minutes with joy. That's why I'm on your screen tonight, to connect those dots without selling smoke. If this ever breaks our way, it happens because the Lakers frame a clean, lawful, heavy deal that keeps enough two-way balance on the roster and gives the Spurs a path they can sell to their fan base with pride. It won't be a surprise bomb out of nowhere. It will be the final step of a months-long choreography that we'll track together. Assets, timing, third-team cooperation, and a head coach ready to unify a system around the tallest advantage the league has seen in years. I'll say the quiet part aloud because you deserve it. On the floor, it's close to unfair. In the books, it's possible but demanding. And now I want your voice in this as the lights stay warm. You tell me your closing five with Wemby in gold. You tell me which picks you'd protect and which you'd slide into swaps. You tell me whether you'd keep Ayton as a second unit anchor or flip him in the construction of the deal to balance salary and timeline. And you tell me how you'd split touches between Luka and Wemby in the first 6 minutes of every half. I read it all. I bring the smartest ideas into the next breakdown, and we keep this conversation at the level it deserves. Smart, specific, and connected to what wins. My concise analysis before we wrap is this. The basketball case is overwhelming. The CBA case is complicated but navigable, and the identity case is strong if the outgoing is surgical. The Lakers should pursue the framework quietly and aggressively, holding a hard line on the pieces that preserve two-way integrity. If the door opens an inch, push. If it doesn't, don't chase shadows. Keep building a rotation that wins by habit, not headlines. Now drop your thoughts below, trade frameworks, minute maps, set calls in crunch time, and make sure you're subscribed with notifications on. When something shifts, you'll get the fast hit here first. And when it's time to go deep, you'll get the film room version with the same clarity and respect you've come to expect from me on Lakers News Fan Report.